They say most betrayals don't start with a bang. They start with a quiet, almost forgettable moment. Something small, a slip, an offhand excuse, something you could have ignored if you wanted to. For me, it was a receipt, not even a physical one, just a bank notification. It was Sunday night. Stephanie was asleep upstairs, probably already 2 dreams deep, judging by how early she'd gone to bed. I was in the kitchen, standing barefoot on the cold tile, sipping leftover wine straight from the bottle. I don't even like wine, but it felt like the kind of night that needed it. I pulled out my phone to check if a deposit hit. I freelance on the side, so I always watch for payments. That's when I saw it. A $318 charge from a place called Fireside Table. Timestamped Friday at 7:42 p.m. Stuck out like a sore thumb. I didn't recognize the name, and we sure as hell hadn't gone anywhere that weekend. Friday night, Steph had said she needed to stay late at work. Something about her boss calling a strategy meeting last minute. She came home around 10:30 p.m. with takeout and a tired smile. Pad thai for me, green curry for her. Kissed me on the cheek, toed off her heels, and collapsed on the couch like it had been just another exhausting corporate day. But now I was staring at this charge. Tasting for 2, Fireside Table. I Googled the place. It was beautiful. Warm lighting, private booths, candlelight. Some reviews even mentioned the staff asking if it was a special occasion when you booked. Their tasting menu was designed specifically for couples. 5 small wine pairings, curated dishes, dessert included. You could even request a seat near the fireplace. The kind of place you'd take someone if you were trying to impress them or seduce them. Not the kind of place your boss sends you to for a company meal. I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't say anything either. I just lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun slow and steady in the dark, trying to figure out if I was being paranoid, or if something in our marriage had quietly shifted while I wasn't looking. The next morning, I printed the receipt. Old school, I know. But I wanted to see her reaction when it hit the table. Wanted to watch her face when there was no screen glare to hide behind, no back button to escape to. She came down in a bathrobe, hair damp from a shower, scrolling through something on her phone, probably Slack or Instagram. She never really put her phone down anymore, come to think of it. "Morning," she said with that casual tone. Like we were just another happily married couple starting another perfectly boring Sunday. I didn't answer, just waited until she set her coffee down. Then I slid the receipt across the table. She paused, didn't look up immediately. Her eyes scanned the printout, and for half a second, literally half a second, I saw something flicker behind her face. Not guilt exactly, but alertness, like she was calculating, like she'd already rehearsed for this. "Oh," she said, setting her coffee down. "That's Kendra's." I waited, said nothing. She used my card by accident. We were booking through the work app, hers didn't go through, so she logged in on my phone, and I guess she forgot to switch profiles. I told her she owes me for it. She already sent me half, actually. Still, I said nothing. Just let the silence stretch. Her tone was so smooth it was eerie. Not defensive, not panicked, just composed. Like she'd already figured out the angle. Like this wasn't new. "Why?" she added, reaching for her croissant. "Did it flag on the card?" I looked at her. "Something like that." "Yeah, don't worry. It's being reimbursed. Total non-event." Non-event. I nodded slowly and took a sip of my coffee. But it tasted different now. Bitter, even though I'd added sugar. I watched her as she scrolled through her phone again, completely unfazed. No apologies. No discomfort. Not even a question like, "Are you upset?" Just smooth deflection. Calm like the ocean before a storm. And I hate to admit it, but for a moment, a stupid, vulnerable moment, I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was harder to live with. Stephanie and I have been married for 6 years. We met in our late 20s at a mutual friend's engagement party. She was this confident, quick-witted woman who could go from talking startup valuations to debating the best pizza place in the city in the same breath. I was drawn to her like a magnet. She made me feel like the only person in the room. For years, we were a team. Or at least I thought we were. But lately, something had changed. Little things, subtle things. Her laughter didn't come as easily. Her phone was suddenly locked with a different passcode. She stopped syncing our shared calendar, which, if you know Steph, is a big deal. She used to color code our entire lives. Groceries, gym classes, date nights. But the past couple months, it was like I'd been locked out of her world. I brought it up once. She said she was just reclaiming a little space, that we were too entangled, that she missed feeling independent. At the time, I nodded, said I understood. I didn't want to be the clingy husband. I thought giving her space meant trusting her. But now, with this receipt in front of me, and that polished lie about Kendra's booking error, I realized something. Space can become distance, and distance can become a wall. And sometimes, when you're not paying attention, someone else slips through that wall before you even know it's there. She finished breakfast like nothing had happened, cleared the plates, kissed me on the cheek, said she was going to hop on a quick Zoom with her design lead. I watched her walk away, her robe swaying lightly with each step, and for the first time since we said, I do, I wasn't sure if I trusted the person walking down that hallway. I wasn't sure who she was anymore. I sat in that kitchen for a long time after she disappeared upstairs, staring at the printout, turning it over in my hand, wondering why it felt like a funeral even though nothing, officially, had happened yet. But deep down, I think I already knew. That wasn't a dinner with Kendra. That was a date. And whoever it was with, it wasn't me. It's strange how the mind works when it's finally been given permission to look. Not speculate, not imagine, but see. After that morning, after the receipt and the too easy lie about Kendra, my brain flipped a switch, like a background process had been running the whole time, quietly logging every little inconsistency, every moment I'd shrugged off with, she's tired, or that was probably nothing, but now it was all surfacing at once, like watching dust rise through a beam of light. The particles had always been there. I just wasn't paying attention. The first thing I noticed was her phone. We used to be open about our devices. Not in a weird, codependent way, just naturally transparent. She'd play Spotify through mine. I'd use hers to set a timer while cooking. Sometimes we'd hand each other our phones to show a meme or a calendar event. Lately, that stopped. Her phone was never out of her sight. Not once. Not on the couch. Not on the nightstand. Not even on the charger when she slept. She started plugging it in downstairs so she wouldn't scroll before bed. But if I so much as glanced toward it when a notification popped up, she'd tilt the screen away with this casual flick of her wrist, and the passcode changed. No heads up, just changed. I asked once, lightly, "Did you update your passcode?" She said, "Yeah, IT said we should start rotating them every quarter." She didn't work in IT. Next came the calendar. We'd shared one for years, color-coded for groceries, vet visits, birthdays. She used to love it. "We're a unit," she once told me. But then she stopped updating it. Suddenly, she had meetings that weren't listed, dinners that came up last minute. Even weekends started filling up with vague plans like co-working catch-ups or strategy sessions at cafes that were nowhere near her office. One Sunday afternoon, she said she was heading out to wrap up the Q2 deck with Michaela. Something about slides needing revisions. She left with her laptop bag and her gym duffel, odd combo. 2 hours later, I passed by the gym on my way to grab groceries. Her car wasn't there. I told myself maybe she'd changed locations. Maybe she got pulled into something unexpected. But that same night, when she got home, I asked, "How was Michaela?" She blinked for a beat too long, then said, "Exhausted." She left early. The air between us felt thinner after that. Then there was the scent. Started small. A few months back, she switched perfumes. From that soft citrusy one I always loved to something heavier, more floral. Said she wanted a change. I didn't mind it. It was just different. A little more mature, maybe. Sharper. But that night after the supposed Michaela meeting, I hugged her when she walked in the door, and there was a second scent. Something underneath the perfume. Subtle but undeniably male. Warm, spicy, almost leathery. And familiar, Not from our home, not from anything I owned. I knew it wasn't mine. I smelled it again a few nights later, faint on her coat collar. Then on the seatbelt in her car. Then, and this is the one that really broke something in me, on our bedsheets. Just enough to notice. Not enough to prove. She noticed I wasn't sleeping much. Started saying things like, "Are you okay? You've seemed stressed lately." I'd shrug it off. What was I supposed to say? Yes, sorry. I've been up all night wondering if you're having an affair? I didn't want to go there yet. I needed more than a scent and a changed passcode. But the fragments kept piling up. One Saturday morning, I offered to take her car in for maintenance. She'd been complaining about a rattle near the wheel well, and I figured it was a good way to be helpful and, yes, to look. Not proud of it. But I was in that space now. When I got in, the mileage caught me first. Her office was about 6 miles from our house. She'd claimed to be working in office more lately, something about collaborating better in person. But her odometer said she'd put nearly 400 miles on the car that week. I opened the glove box to check the service records. That's when I saw it. A movie ticket stub, tucked in next to the registration. The date on it? A Thursday night 3 weeks earlier. I remember that night. She told me she was going to a team-building mixer. Just drinks and games at the WeWork, she'd said. But the ticket wasn't for some big release, not the kind of film we'd usually see. It was a French drama about infidelity. Ironically, I Googled the theater boutique 2 towns over. We'd never been. Again, nothing conclusive, but more dust in the beam. At this point, my brain had fully shifted into investigator mode. I started noticing how she no longer left her laptop open around the house. She used to work from the couch with spreadsheets splayed across her screen, half the time asking me questions about slide design or word choice. Now, she worked behind closed doors. Door shut, noise machine on. One time, I walked by and heard her laughing. Not the forced, polite kind, but the full, belly-deep kind. Then silence. Then the door opened, and she stepped out holding her phone to her ear, saying, "All right, I'll message you later." She didn't look surprised to see me, just unreadable. That same week, we went to her company's quarterly mixer. I used to go with her to those things all the time. It was usually a little awkward. I was one of the only spouses who showed up, but her team always made an effort to include me. Not this time. Her colleagues were polite, but distant, almost rehearsed, like they'd been warned. The real punch, though, came from her boss. I'd seen pictures of him on LinkedIn. Mid-40s, always in designer sunglasses, the kind of guy who talks about hustle culture and crushing Q4 over Negronis. I expected him to shake my hand, do the usual nod and smile. But when we were introduced, he just looked at me, a half-second too long, and gave this tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then he turned to someone else and walked away. I couldn't say exactly what it was, but in that moment, I felt like I didn't belong there. Like I was the outsider. Like there was an inside joke I wasn't part of, and the punchline was me. That night, I lay awake next to Stephanie, staring at the ceiling again. I thought about how easily she slept, how peaceful her breathing sounded, how long it had been since we'd really talked about anything that mattered. I used to think the scariest part of a marriage falling apart would be the yelling, the accusations, the fights. But now I know. The scariest part is the silence. The long, slow unraveling where you're not even sure when the thread started to pull loose, only that it did. And that no one else seems to notice but you. I still didn't say anything. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hear the answers I feared were coming. But the picture was forming. And soon I wouldn't be able to pretend I didn't see it. There's a point where suspicion becomes certainty. And once you cross that line, you can't go back. I used to think that knowing the truth, really knowing, would bring some kind of relief. That once you had the facts, you'd feel justified, clear, maybe even powerful. But that's not what it felt like. Not for me. What I felt was smaller. Like the floor beneath me had thinned out and was finally giving way. The night it happened, she told me she wouldn't be home. We were standing in the kitchen. She was packing a bag. Not a suitcase, not an overnight bag. Just her big tan leather tote. Enough space for a laptop, maybe a change of clothes. She said she was skipping the company party that night, that she had too much work to finish. They're all going to be drunk by 9 anyway, she said with a tired laugh. What's the point? I nodded, pretended I agreed. She kissed me lightly, grabbed her keys, and told me not to wait up. That was Friday. She didn't come home that night. No text, no call, no excuse. I stayed up all night, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't sleep even if I tried. I sat on the edge of the couch with the TV on mute, watching the reflection of the hallway in the darkened screen. Every time a car passed outside, I wondered if it was her. Every time it wasn't, I wondered if I should be calling someone, her friend, her mom, the police. But deep down, I already knew she wasn't in danger. She just wasn't here. At around 4:30 a.m., I got up and walked into her office. We used to share this space before the pandemic ended and she started going back in a few days a week. Since then, it had kind of become her zone. But she left the door unlocked that night, and I took that as a sign. I don't know what I was looking for. I didn't even turn the light on at first. Just stood there in the dark, feeling like an intruder in my own house. Then I saw it. A white envelope sitting on the corner of her desk. No label, just there. I opened it. Inside was a flash drive. No note, no explanation, just a cheap, unbranded USB. I hesitated. I'm not proud of this next part, but I did it anyway. I plugged it into my laptop. 2 files. The first was a video, surveillance footage, restaurant lounge camera, black and white, no audio. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago, Friday. One of the nights she said she had to work late. It showed a high-end restaurant, a soft booth tucked away near the back. She was sitting there, Stephanie, in a dress I didn't recognize, low back, dark, elegant. She looked beautiful, not corporate beautiful, date night beautiful. Across from her was her boss. He looked exactly like I remembered, smug, tailored blazer, sunglasses hanging from the collar of his shirt even though it was evening. They were laughing, leaning in, close. She touched his wrist at one point, gently, then left her hand there for a moment too long. And then it happened. He leaned forward, said something, and kissed her. Not a drunk stumble of a kiss. Not awkward or unsure. It was intentional, slow. Her hand rose to his shoulder, like this wasn't the first time, like she'd been waiting for it. I paused the video, sat back, breathed. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the still frame. Long enough for the screen to dim. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But there was no space for that yet. It was like my brain was buffering. The emotions were queued up. I just hadn't processed them yet. I opened the second file. It was a **T of a rideshare receipt. Same date, same night. Pickup, fireside table. Drop-off, condo complex across town. Not our address, not even close. Estimated time of arrival, 10:07 p.m. No return ride logged. And that was it. That was the moment. No more theories. No more what-ifs. Just the truth laid bare in 2 files. She hadn't just made a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a blurry video from some vague dinner that could be explained away with networking or client entertainment. She lied. Deliberately, repeatedly, and with someone I'd shaken hands with. I closed the laptop, pulled the flash drive out and set it on the table. At some point, the sun came up. I didn't even realize how long I'd been sitting there until I heard her key in the front door. My body tensed automatically. She didn't know I was awake. She walked in like nothing was wrong. Still in that same dark dress, but with her blazer over it now. Casual, like she'd been out with friends and fell asleep on a couch somewhere. She paused when she saw me at the kitchen table. Her eyes flicked to the clock. "Hey!" she said softly, voice hoarse. "You're up early." I didn't answer, just nodded toward the desk behind me. She stepped closer and saw the folder. Not the flash drive. Not the video. Folder. Neatly labeled. Inside was everything. Printed stills from the restaurant footage. The ride log. A copy of the receipt from the night I first suspected her. She froze. Her eyes scanned the documents, then looked at me. No denial. No protest. Just this look. Like she'd known this moment would come eventually. Maybe that's why she left the flash drive out in the first place. Maybe she wanted to get caught. Or maybe she just stopped caring. She started. But I stood up. Walked past her. Didn't speak. She reached for my arm. Light touch. Hesitant. But I moved away before she made contact. Still no words. No screaming. No drama. Just a silence that spoke louder than anything I could have said. Later that day, she texted me from the guest room. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. She stayed quiet after that. I spent the afternoon copying the flash drive. Made 3 duplicates. One for my safe. One for a lawyer. One I mailed to my brother just in case. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew I had to protect myself. The game was different now. That night I slept in the bedroom. She didn't. And even though I was alone in that bed, I finally slept. Not well, but without fear. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't wonder anymore. I knew. People expect betrayal to come with a dramatic confrontation. Raised voices, shattered dishes, tears on the floor. But the truth? It's quieter than that. It's in the way someone doesn't flinch when they're caught. It's in how they say nothing, not even sorry. Just stillness. Like it's not a collapse, just a resignation. After the flash drive and the folder, I didn't yell. I didn't demand an explanation. I didn't ask why. I already knew the answer, even if I didn't have the details. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a pattern, built over weeks, months probably. Quiet, methodical deception. I didn't need her to admit it out loud. The silence between us said it better than she ever could. So I got to work. First, I made sure the evidence was secure. I copied the files onto 3 USB drives, each labeled with a sticker and a date. One went into the back of the filing cabinet in my home office, taped inside an old binder. Another into the safe we used to keep our passports in. The third, I gave to my older brother when we met for coffee later that week. He didn't ask questions. Just looked at me, nodded once, and pocketed the drive. "Insurance," I said. "Got it," he replied. Next, I contacted a lawyer. Not to file anything yet, just to consult. I explained the situation briefly, clinically. I showed her the files, the ride receipts, the email Stephanie had left open once on the kitchen iPad. Nothing graphic. Just enough to draw a line between business dinners and something more. "You have leverage," the attorney told me. "If this goes public inside her company, it's not just a personal scandal. It's a professional liability. They'll try to handle it quietly." I nodded. That was the plan. And then I sent the report. I created a new email account. No name. No identifiers. I attached everything, the video, the timestamped ride logs, the receipt from Fireside Table, and a typed summary of events. I included a short message. This is not about personal revenge. But upper-level affairs with direct supervisors create serious ethical and legal concerns. This information is being shared anonymously to ensure accountability. I didn't address it to Stephanie's boss directly. I sent it to the Internal Audit Division, the General HR inbox, and the anonymous tip line the company advertised on their website. I knew there was a risk they'd trace it back. But something told me they wouldn't want to. To make sure it didn't get buried, I printed hard copies. Yes, printed, and mailed them to the company's main office in 3 separate envelopes. All from different mailboxes around the city. It wasn't about revenge. It was about exposure. And still, I didn't say a word to her. Stephanie moved through the house like a ghost that week. She didn't try to talk to me. Not really. A few times I caught her watching me. Lingering in the doorway when I was folding laundry or closing her laptop a little too quickly when I passed behind her at the kitchen counter. I slept in our bedroom. She stayed in the guest room. We didn't eat meals together. Didn't speak unless it was logistical. Packages. Groceries. Something vague about an upcoming vet appointment for the cat. One morning, I found her crying in the laundry room. I was walking past and heard the sound. Quiet. Muffled. She didn't see me. I didn't interrupt. I just kept walking. I wasn't cold. I wasn't cruel. I just didn't have anything left to give her. And then 5 days later it started. Her boss took a leave of absence. The news broke internally first, through whispers, Slack threads, nervous glances. She didn't tell me outright, but I overheard the phone call. She was on the patio, pacing. "No, I understand," she said. "It's just, the timing is really sudden." A pause. "I'll fill in on the Q3 planning call." Another pause. "Yes. No, I'm fine. Just surprised." She came back inside with her usual poker face. But I saw the crack. That night, she barely touched her food. By the following week, she was pulled from a project she'd led for over a year. Not demoted, not fired, just removed, reassigned to support work, she said. I pretended not to notice. Online, the buzz started. Not publicly, no headlines, just hints. Anonymous posts on startup gossip forums. People speculating about leadership changes, quiet HR shakeups, and gray zone power dynamics inside smaller tech firms. No names were dropped, but some of the details were specific. A few too specific. Stephanie saw them too. I knew because one day I walked into the living room and found her refreshing the same forum page over and over. She closed the laptop when she heard me, then stood up and asked if I wanted anything from the store. I said no. And that was it. The house was silent, but not empty. There was a kind of pressure to it, like we were both holding our breath, waiting for something else to snap. But it never did. She didn't confront me, didn't ask if I'd sent the files. Maybe she suspected, maybe she knew, but she never brought it up, and I didn't offer it. Some nights, I'd find myself walking past the guest room, pausing outside her door, listening. Sometimes I could hear her typing, sometimes nothing. Once, I heard her sobbing soft, broken, like she didn't want even the walls to hear. I didn't go in, because whatever she was mourning, it wasn't us anymore. It was what she'd lost, or maybe what she thought she'd still get to keep. And honestly, that wasn't mine to carry. A few days later, I got a text from a blocked number. "I never meant to hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm sorry." I didn't reply. I stared at it for a while, long enough for the screen to dim. Then I archived the message and turned off my phone. What would I have said, anyway? That I forgave her? That I understood? That I still loved her? I didn't know if any of that was true. All I knew was that the silence between us had said more than words ever could. And I wasn't going to fill it for her. Not anymore. Not after everything. It had been a few weeks. The air in the house had settled into something that wasn't quite peace, but close. The kind of quiet that comes after a fire. Not calm, exactly, but still. The damage already done. The ashes cooling. Stephanie was still living in the guest room. We passed each other like coworkers who'd once been friends but now had nothing in common but the hallway. No fights, no fake smiles, just neutrality. And honestly, I preferred it that way. I'd already said everything I needed to by not saying anything at all. But then, out of nowhere, she called. Not from her number. A blocked one again. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened to the message, I had to play it twice just to be sure I heard her right. "Michael, I need to talk to you. This isn't about us. It's about my job. I'm filing a formal complaint against the company. I'm claiming gender-based retaliation. They treated me differently than they would have treated a man. My lawyer might reach out. I just need you to confirm a few things, not about the affair, just that I was under pressure. That I was burned out. Please don't make this worse than it already is." That was her version of reaching out. Not to apologize, not to explain, but to ask me, the husband she betrayed, to back her up. Not as a person, but as a witness. I didn't respond. A few days later, her lawyer did reach out. Not threatening, just formal. They wanted to speak to me about observations regarding Stephanie's emotional state during her final quarter at the company. Their words, not mine. The email was polite, professional, but I could feel the manipulation underneath. They were building a case, and I was part of it. At first, I ignored it. I didn't owe her anything, especially not now. But then I got a second email, this time from the company's legal team. They were conducting their own review. Internal complaint. External pressure. I don't know the full story, but it sounded like things had escalated. Quietly but fast. They asked if I'd be willing to provide a statement. I agreed. We scheduled a Zoom call. I cleaned up the home office, shaved, put on a button-down shirt like it was an interview. Maybe it was. I didn't know who I'd be facing. A panel of lawyers? HR reps? A blurry row of muted faces taking notes? Turns out it was just two people. One from HR. One from legal. Both looked tired, measured. The kind of people who had already seen too many sides of this story. They asked if I was comfortable. I said I was. Then they asked me to describe what I observed about Stephanie's schedule, her behavior, her work habits, during the period leading up to her reassignment. I kept my answers brief, factual, no emotion, no character assassination. She worked late, not always at home. She started taking more private meetings. She said she was under pressure, but she didn't talk about specifics. They nodded, typed, asked a few follow-ups. Then came the one I was waiting for. Do you believe her reassignment was based on gender bias? I looked straight into the camera. No, I said. I believe it was based on deception. They paused. The HR rep leaned forward slightly, but didn't interrupt. I continued, calmly. I don't know the internal conversations that took place. I wasn't in those rooms. But from what I observed and what I found, the issue wasn't burnout. It was dishonesty. Repeated, calculated dishonesty. Not just in her personal life. In how she used company resources. In who she met with. Where she went. They didn't press me to explain. But I knew they understood. After a few more procedural questions, they thanked me and ended the call. I closed my laptop and sat there in silence. I thought I'd feel something, maybe satisfaction, vindication. But instead, all I felt was tired. Later that week, I heard through a mutual contact that her claim had been denied. Quietly, no public statement. Just a soft, internal closing of a file. No one celebrated. No one talked about it openly. But I saw the shift in her. Stephanie stopped pacing. She stopped making coffee in the morning. Stopped playing her sad music in the guest room like a passive-aggressive soundtrack. She was still in the house, but her presence had thinned out, like a ghost who knew she wasn't welcome anymore. And then came the second call. Another blocked number. Another voicemail. This time, her voice was colder. I know you think you did the right thing, but you didn't have to go that far. I wasn't asking for forgiveness, just fairness. Fairness. That word stuck with me. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. But instead, I just deleted the message and moved on. Because here's the thing about people like Stephanie. They don't always lie for thrill or cruelty. Sometimes they lie to survive. To shape a story they can live with. A version of events where they're not the villain, just misunderstood. I think that's what this complaint was. Not about justice, but about rewriting the ending. She couldn't control how things had played out, so she tried to recast herself. A woman under pressure. A casualty of corporate politics. Someone whose mistakes weren't really hers, just symptoms of a flawed system. And she wanted me to validate that version. But I couldn't, because that's not the story I lived. The story I lived was simpler. It was about trust. And what happens when someone chooses to break it, again and again until there's nothing left but silence. I didn't tell my friends about the Zoom call. Didn't bring it up with my family. It wasn't worth reliving. But something changed after that. I stopped waiting for the next move. For the next twist. I didn't check her texts anymore. Didn't watch the guest room door like a hawk. I didn't care what she was planning, or if she had another angle. Because none of it involved me now. I played my part. Told the truth. And walked away. I think that's the part that scared her most. That I wasn't yelling. Wasn't chasing her for closure. Wasn't giving her anything to fight against. Just silence. And sometimes that's the loudest thing of all. She left her key and garage remote on the counter. No note. No goodbye. Just gone. I packed her things into boxes, no anger, just precision. Found old photos, souvenirs, kept them in a closet not to forget, but to move forward. The flash drive, I later learned, came from an intern. Someone tired of secrets. I never met them, but I owed them my peace. It wasn't closure, just quiet. And for now, that was enough. Stephanie called once more. Asked me not to complicate things if her new case went to court. I said nothing. When I testified again, I stuck to facts. No drama, no hate, just truth. When it ended, I walked through the house, my house now, and for the first time it didn't feel like waiting. No more lies, no more doubt, just silence. And finally, I could hear myself again. Honest, whole, free.